The Detroit Lions are burning through defensive assets in late July, forcing Brad Holmes to audit a broken roster after losing key starters to cuffs and blown knees. We're breaking down the cold math behind Terrion Arnold's release, whether reclamation projects like Trevon Diggs make financial sense over Rock Ya-Sin and Ennis Rakestraw, and if absorbing Cleveland's Grant Delpit stabilizes the back end while Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch stay on the shelf. But the real leverage play on the market sits with a game-wrecking edge defender, a guy who put up 44 total pressures, 9.5 sacks, and graded out 13th overall on PFF last year without a dime of guaranteed cash left on his deal. And hey, if you're enjoying the breakdown today, hit that like button for us. It helps the channel out more than you know, and we really appreciate you being here. Let's look at Trevon Diggs and this secondary deficit first. This cornerback room went from a position of strength to a total asset void the second Terrion Arnold got cuffed and released. Detroit built their whole offseason blueprint around Arnold taking that massive leap in year 3, so cutting him loose wiped out a core starter on a cheap rookie contract. Losing a starting corner in year 3 to off-field misconduct is a total write-off on high-value draft picks. You spent prime draft equity expecting starter snaps, and instead you're left holding zero return on investment. That brings us to a name getting thrown around hard in Detroit right now, veteran corner Trevon Diggs. According to Fanside's Winston Wilcox, this pairing makes total sense for everybody involved. Wilcox pointed out that Detroit's depth deficit in the secondary is getting worse every day, while Diggs is coming off a brutal 2025, where he dealt with injuries, got dumped by multiple teams, and wasn't even sure he'd have a helmet for 2026. From where Wilcox sits, this is the exact right moment for Detroit to throw a cheap dart at a guy whose market value completely crashed. Taking a flyer on a crashed asset is standard distressed debt football. When a guy's market value hits rock bottom, you aren't risking cap space. You're just buying options on cheap reclamation. Not that long ago, Diggs was the highest-priced young secondary player on the market. He came in as a first-round pick, went crazy with 11 interceptions in his second year, snagged a Pro Bowl spot, and got named first-team All-Pro before backing it up with another Pro Bowl trip the next year. Then the tape turned ugly. A torn ACL wrecked his 2023 after just 2 games, and when he came back in 2024, he looked half a step slow out there. By 2025, his movement was so bad that Dallas kicked him to the curb, and his quick stop in Green Bay lasted literally 1 start before the Packers cut him loose too. 11 interceptions in a single season is ancient history when the tape shows compromised movement after knee surgery. A first-team All-Pro getting dumped by 2 divisional rivals in 12 months tells you the league already priced in his physical decline. It's been 3 full years since Diggs was a guy you could actually trust on the outside, but he's also farther away from that ACL tear than he's ever been. Whether a change of scenery in Detroit can unlock baseline starter play is the exact financial equation the Lions have got to solve before making a contract offer. As of right now, Detroit hasn't rushed out to throw money at any free agent corner. They even watched Rasul Douglas pack his bags for Washington right after Arnold got cut. That tells me the front office values cap flexibility more than overpaying out of panic. Watching Rasul Douglas sign in DC without making a competitive offer means Brad Holmes refuses to overpay in an inflated market. That's a general manager sticking to his valuation model instead of letting social media set his price. Rock Ya-Sin isn't ever going to give you the elite peak that Diggs had years ago, but the guy stays healthy and has actually played real snaps recently. And if Rock Ya-Sin falls flat on his face, Ennis Rakestraw is sitting there as the ultimate wildcard, a former second-round pick who spent 2 whole years eating turf on the injury list, but still has real physical tools if he can just stay out of the trainer's room. Fixing that corner room is critical, but cornerback isn't the only spot in this back 7 where the front office is managing an asset deficit. Detroit's safety situation feels completely different than it did 12 months ago, and it's not because the talent vanished, but because the 2 best guys in that room are battling their way back from massive injuries. Having Joseph and Branch both on the medical report isn't an emotional issue, it's a structural liability. That brings us to a specific name generating real smoke: Cleveland Browns safety Grant Delpit. Delpit was one of the few bright spots on an ugly 5-12 Browns team in 2025, and with Cleveland already waving the white flag by moving on from Myles Garrett, everybody's asking whether that franchise is ready to flip a guy who's entering the absolute last year of his deal. When Cleveland dumps Myles Garrett and posts a 5-12 record, their entire roster becomes liquid. Delpit's on an expiring contract, and Cleveland be financially irresponsible not to convert his cap hit into future draft capital. Delpit locked in a 3-year, $36 million contract extension back in December 2023, and he proved he was worth every cent on the field last year. As Browns on SI pointed out during the season, the guy was putting up ridiculous production, racking up 41 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 2 quarterback hits, a forced fumble, and a sack, which are stats you usually see from a linebacker or an edge rusher instead of a safety, all while throwing in 3 pass deflections and an interception for good measure. $36 million over 3 years is reasonable baseline money for a box safety who produces line of scrimmage numbers. 41 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, and a sack proves he functions as an extra front 7 asset in run defense. The real value in his profile was how everywhere he was on the field. Former Browns defensive boss Jim Schwartz talked about how Cleveland moved him around like a chess piece depending on the down and distance, playing him up on the line like a cornerback in short yardage spots, dropping him back into deep safety and base packages, and sliding him down as a nickel or dime linebacker when the package called for it. Schwartz gave all the credit to Delpit's smarts and work ethic, saying those traits mattered just as much as his physical skills to pull off that kind of crazy versatility. For a Detroit secondary trying to keep the boat steady while Joseph and Branch heal up, shipping a reasonable package of draft picks over to Cleveland for a defensive weapon with that kind of reach is the exact low-risk play that can pay off big time. Shoring up the safety valve is one way to keep this defense afloat, but if you really want to protect a patched-together secondary, you go straight after the guy throwing the football. If this secondary's the messiest spot on the whole field, the fastest way to hide it is by beating the living hell out of the quarterback before he can even set his feet. A mean pass rush shrinks the clock in a passer's head, which means he can't sit back there and pick on your corners and safeties, and that's a massive deal for Kelvin Shepherd's defense considering how much man-to-man coverage he's running. That's exactly why Pittsburgh Steelers edge rusher Alex Highsmith keeps popping up as a massive trade option. Highsmith stepping into his age 29 season here in 2026 with 2 years remaining on his deal, right when Pittsburgh's already shelling out huge cash to TJ Watt and Nick Herbig after locking both of them down on big extensions. ESPN's Bill Barnwell pointed out Highsmith last month as a prime trade candidate for that exact reason, saying that unlike Watt, Highsmith's sliding into the late stretch of his prime with money left on his deal that isn't guaranteed, giving Pittsburgh actual room to make a move. Pittsburgh locked up Watt and Herbig to massive deals, which makes Highsmith the odd asset out on their balance sheet. With no guaranteed money left on his deal, Pittsburgh has every reason to move him before his market depreciates. The numbers on the stat sheet back up the buzz completely. Highsmith led that whole Pittsburgh defense with 9.5 sacks last year and sits on 45 for his career, along with 64 tackles for loss. Outside of his rookie year, he's never put up fewer than 6 sacks in a season, and he topped out at 14.5 back in 2022. On top of that, the guy doesn't miss games. He's suited up for 90 out of 101 possible matchups since 2020, starting 79 of them. Pro Football Focus had him ranked 13th among all qualifying edge defenders last year, logging 44 total pressures on the quarterback. 45 career sacks and 90 games played since 2020 proves durability and workload efficiency. In an era where edge rushers live on the injury report, logging 44 pressures a year is a high return asset. One proposed trade framework has Detroit shipping a 2027 second-rounder and a 2028 sixth-rounder over to Pittsburgh to grab Highsmith. For Detroit, that gives Aidan Hutchinson a legit battle-tested partner on the opposite edge, giving this pass rush another nasty threat after watching this team hit rock bottom in the NFC North following 2 straight division titles. It also helps patch up that Terrion Arnold release without saying a word. A faster pass rush keeps a thin secondary from getting torched downfield. Pairing Highsmith with Aidan Hutchinson forces offenses to allocate double teams evenly across both edges. You trade a second and a sixth to prevent teams from keying on Hutchinson, increasing the productivity of your whole front four. On Pittsburgh's side, trading Highsmith wipes roughly $14.5 million right off their books and turns a veteran asset into future draft stock, especially while they're sitting in middle-of-the-pack purgatory with Aaron Rodgers taking snaps in what's probably his final ride. That incoming pick would give the Steelers extra ammo inside the top 100 of a 2027 draft class that's supposed to be loaded with talent. Saving $14.5 million in cap space while banking a top 100 pick in a deep 2027 draft is a clean asset liquidation for Pittsburgh. For Detroit, it turns cap flexibility directly into immediate pressure. Detroit's also looking pretty thin in the linebacker room as camp gets going, with Jack Campbell and Derek Barnes penciled in as the main starters and almost zero battle-tested depth behind them. That adds another big reason why a tough, run-stuffing veteran like Highsmith makes so much sense, beyond just his sack numbers. With Campbell and Barnes carrying the load and zero proven depth behind them, linebacker is a thin line on the depth chart. Highsmith gives you a run-stuffing edge setter who absorbs snaps and insulates your second level from getting exposed. Tell me in the comments if you'd shell out a second-round pick for Highsmith or gamble on internal depth. And subscribe if you want cold, technical NFL analysis every single day without the network fluff.